dashboard, okay? What book are we in? What chapter are we in? Chapter number 4, and we're going to start with, not Daniel. We're going to start with King Nebuchadnezzar. The Bible actually says at the end of this chapter that Nebuchadnezzar was feeling pretty high and mighty of himself. You would think after a guy has seen God show up a couple of times. Don't you remember? He had a dream. Nobody could remember the dream. Daniel shows up and says, God, help me remember this dream. And then Daniel remembers every single detail. And the king's like astonished that Daniel remembered the dream. He's like, wow, Daniel's God. Boy, his God is something else. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego get thrown into the fiery furnace. He said, wow, guys, your God is something else. Your God's a special God like all gods. Your God's a powerful God like all gods. But your God, he is something else. And so we're like, wow, he keeps acknowledging their God. But last week we talked about how he never made that God his God, at least not yet. So one day, this king, shortly after every time he's had the opportunity to learn a valuable lesson, has forgotten the lesson that's quickly been left behind, starts to elevate himself in his pride and in his arrogance. And in Daniel chapter number 4, he's taking a walk one day. He starts like doing a little bit of chest thumping and some self-back patting. We talked about, would you look at all this stuff I've accomplished? Babylon has conquered mighty kingdoms and nations. We have toppled kings. We have removed them from their thrones. Our territory is the kingdom of the world, the known world right now. There is nobody else that compares, nobody else that can contend against us. It's just Babylon, and it's all because of me and what I've done. And God said, oh, Nebuchadnezzar, your pride has come before what everybody else will soon realize, the fall that is set before you. Even at this day, all of this is going to be taken away from you. So Daniel chapter number 4, read with me for just a few verses, if you would please, as I tell you this story. It starts in verse 28. And all this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel chapter 4, verse 29. At the end of 12 months, he walked into the palace of the kingdom of Babylon. And the king spake and said, boy, is this not the great Babylon? I'm telling you, I have built it for a house of the kingdom that by my might and by my power, for my honor and for my majesty. I mean, is there anything you've ever seen like this? While the word was in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven, saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee I'm talking to you. To thee is spoken. Here's what I want you to hear. Your kingdom's going to be taken away from you. He just got done saying, hey, here's my resume. Whoa, I am good. And God said, yeah, you're about to lose it. Here's what's going to happen to you, as a matter of fact, Nebuchadnezzar. They'll drive thee away from men. They won't let you sit at their tables. They won't invite you into their houses. People won't be bowing before you. There'll be no curtsy take place when those massive throne room doors open. And there, as you sit upon the throne, people come in to pay their homage to the great King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of the one kingdom of the world, the king of Babylon. Nobody will pay you any attention. Men won't walk in fear of you because of reverence and respect and honor. People won't serve you and trip over themselves to find favor in your eyes. Your mind will begin to slide, and your behavior is going to be unlike anything you could ever imagine. I just want to read it to you for a minute. Men will drive you away. The only place you'll have left to live is with the beasts of the field. You'll be required to eat grass like the animals do, like cows and oxen. They'll walk right by you, not pay you any attention because you've become an insane man. So what did Nebuchadnezzar say? Nothing, because in verse 33, in the exact self-same hour that this was told to Nebuchadnezzar, he was driven from among men, and he ate grass as oxen. And his body was wet in the morning with the dew that fell down from heaven, till the hairs of his head were grown like eagle's feathers, and his nails had become like bird claws. You're like, preacher, what in the world happened? A man had raised himself to where he needed no God, and God removed what the authority was that the man had placed in his position. Man had said, no God, therefore I'm the king and I'm the top of my life. And God said, well, then I'll take you away. And he loses his mind. And the man who was his own authority, the man who was his own might, the man who had his own resume, was out there chewing grass with cattle and being ignored by everybody. But then the Bible says, after time, one day Nebuchadnezzar, on his hands and knees with long fingernails and woolly hair, came to himself as his mind came back to him. And when he got up from this position this time, after having witnessed the dream being fulfilled, after having seen God in the fiery furnace, but never, ever, ever giving himself over to God, something powerful takes place at the end of Nebuchadnezzar's story. And I'm just reading it to you so that I don't misspeak it at all. In verse 34, at the end of days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, it's kind of like he's having a memory. I lifted up my eyes unto heaven, And all of a sudden, my mind came back to me, and my understanding returned to me. And this is the first time we've read something about this. I blessed the Most High. I praised and I honored him that liveth forever. I recognize the one whose kingdom and dominion is everlasting dominion. His kingdom and dominion goes from generation to generation. And all the inhabitants of the earth, everybody, including old Babylon King Nebuchadnezzar, we're nothing when it comes up to measuring ourselves in the eyes of God. It goes on to say that verse 37, I, Nebuchadnezzar, will praise and extol and honor the King of heaven. All of his works are true, his ways, his judgments, because all those who walk in pride, he can knock off of their high horse pretty quickly. Now, we've heard all of these stories of Nebuchadnezzar and all of these encounters he's had with the people of God, but not one time did their God become his God until this part of the story. The Bible says he lives for a little bit, but it doesn't tell me how long, and then he dies, and his grandson, Belshazzar, takes over the throne of Babylon. Now, Belshazzar has no fear of God or no repudiation of God because those kingdoms have been conquered. Those men have been assimilated into his camps. We've taken slaves. We've appointed all three of the guys that walked out of the fiery furnace. You know, when Granddad did his thing, they're all serving in the kingdom. Daniel's serving in the kingdom. And now there's no enemies for us because who dare would come up and challenge me? I am the great king of Babylon. You know what we should do? Let's throw a party. So Belshazzar does this in Babylon. He opens up the gates. He invites thousands, the Bible say, to be able to show up at his party. And then he says, this isn't enough. This has to be nobody can party like I know how to party. Let's go crash all the treasures of Jerusalem. I heard a long time ago, my grandfather took me down to the vault to show me all of these treasures from all these nations that we had conquered and all of these kingdoms that we had defeated. And there was a temple that had these holy relics that they considered, these goblets of gold from the house of God or the temple or whatever. That's what I want to drink from. You go get me the cups that were fit for a god and bring them into my throne room. Pour my wine into these cups. Let's drink and be merry. And the Bible says they got drunk out of their daggone minds. It says that they were acting insane. The whole house of Babylon became just chaotic. The guards are laying at the gate drunk. There's thousands of people in the throne room drunk. And in the midst of great partying and noise and music and dancing and laughter, you've seen it. You've seen all the pictures the world's tried to paint of this is what a good time looks like. Can you imagine the debauchery that was taking place inside that throne room that day when there was no rules? No rules. I'm going to reward you for all the favor that Babylon has had. I want everybody to walk out of this place saying, whoa, there is nobody like Belshazzar, 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 silence. All of a sudden, there is an immediate death that takes over in the room. And the Bible says a hand forms in the middle of the throne room where everybody was just partying. Maybe at first the people farther away from the throne thought, this is great. Hey, check it out what the magicians are able to do. Check it out what the sorcerers are able to do. But quickly as the laughter started to spread and the silence began to grow, all the way from the thousands of people that were on the inside of the room to the outside of the room, they all turned to look their attention at the king, and the king is ghost white. The hand trails itself across the throne room till it ends upon the wall. And when the hand reaches the wall, it begins to write ancient letters into the wall. After I had written a couple of words, the king cried, what does it mean? Somebody tell me. What does it mean? Astrologers? Your Highness, it's in a dialect we don't know. It's a language long since dead. Wise men, counsel, somebody, I must know. What does this statement mean? Panic begins to grip him, and all of a sudden there's an older woman who comes forward and says, there was a man who for your grandfather was able to interpret dreams. Who is this man? Who is the man that can interpret such dreams? His name is Daniel. Somebody quick, go find Daniel. Bring him to my throne room. Daniel walks in, and there upon the wall are the words that have been written by the finger. The king says, I tell you what, if you can translate this statement for me tonight, and if you could tell me what this statement means and what it has to do with me at all, I'll make you the third ruler of all of Babylon. There'll be nobody else that's over you other than myself and the second in command. And you will have rule of all Babylon. I'll give you my robes. I'll give you rings on your fingers. I'll give you palaces and jewelry. I'll give you wealth untold. And Daniel said, just keep it all. The king's like, well, can you read it? Your Highness, I can read it. Well, is it good? No. Well, do I want to know? No. Well, can you tell me? Yes. Well, then tell me, what's the saying? He said, the saying says that God has come forward to you. It's right here in Daniel chapter number 5, if you want to flip it over for just a moment. The Bible says the king's partying. In the first 5 verses, he makes a great feast. Thousands of his lord drink wine before the thousands. Everybody's drunk. While he tasted the wine, he asked for the gold and the silver vessels that his father had taken out of the temple, which was in Jerusalem. Bring them on up here. Let the princes and the wives and the women, everybody just drink. They brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, and they drank wine, in verse 4. In the same hour, fingers of a man's hand showed up and rode over against the candlestick upon the plaister of the wall. In the king's palace, the king was able to see the part that the hand had written. And all of a sudden, the smile got wiped slap off of his face. His countenance changed, his laughter quickly dissipated, and his thoughts troubled him, so much so that you ever been so hit with news out of nowhere that your chest instantly began to tighten and hurt? That it feel like you just got done wrestling with a bear or something. Your body starts to hurt. Your body's shaking. This happens to me sometimes. I can get so nervous or so emotional. I'm not a big screamer, shouter. I've never been an idiot that punches holes in the wall to risk breaking his hands. It's just not the way my temper has ever revealed itself. I shake. I have an uncontrollable shake. When I'm terrified, I shake. When I'm angry, I shake. When I'm emotional, I'll shake. I can't hold papers. My hands will shake. It's just always been who I am. Is there anybody else can even remotely associate with what I'm describing? When I become severely emotionally compromised, I just begin to shake. Does that happen to anybody else? Let me put my glasses on. I got to know I'm all by myself. Good. Any of the rest of you say, nope, never happened to me. Let me see your hands if that's never happened to you. You don't know what you're missing. I really don't, okay? Nothing like an internal seizure to make you feel like, good gracious, there's something wrong with me. And then I'll hurt. I'll feel like I've had the flu for days. I'll feel like I bench press Volvos. I don't know what it's like to bench press a Volvo. I don't like weights. But I'm just telling you, I'll feel like that. My joints will bother me. And the Bible says instantaneously, he's drunk out of his mind. His smile gets wiped off of his face. His laughter disappears from his heart. And his body begins to shake with fear as he's watching these words. Somebody says, go and get Daniel. He goes and gets Daniel. Daniel shows up later in the chapter. He says, I'm going to tell you, here's what each word means. It means, number one, God has been watching your kingdom, and the number of the days for your kingdom are coming to an end. God is going to finish it in verse 26. God has numbered your kingdom. He's let you survive for so many days that God has decided it's done. Now I need you to stop. Don't you remember this dream? Nebuchadnezzar says, what was it? There's a golden head, and then it changes into a different metal. That changes into a different metal. That changes till it gets down to clay. Well, what does it mean? It means there's Babylon right here and right now. You're the head, but you won't last forever. And the king said, oh, yes, I will. I'll just build a huge golden statue, and we'll just worship the golden statue. And I'll walk through my garden one day, and I'll say, well, did you look at the kingdom I built? There's nobody that can come against the kingdom I built. I'm the man. Till I go crazy and eat grass out in the field for a while. Then God gives me my consciousness, and I'm like, oh, my goodness. God, forgive me. I have learned a lesson that whoever raises himself higher than God can be knocked down. Satan learned the lesson. Nebuchadnezzar learned the lesson. I've learned you're the most high God. Your dominion is over all dominions. Your kingdom is over all kingdoms. Nobody can compare to you. Belshazzar shows up and he says, he's crazy. Nobody takes him seriously. His witness has been compromised. He was out there eating grass in the field. I know how to rule this kingdom. And Daniel says, no, king. God's been counting down your days. And we've reached the bottom of the golden head. God has decided Babylon is finished. Here's what's happened, king. God put you in the balance. I've heard this quote in movies. I've heard people say it their entire life. It originates from the dream and from the writing that's on the wall in verse number 27. You have been weighed in the balances, and you are found wanting. You got weighed, and there's not enough on your side to balance the account of what is owed by you in this kingdom of Babylon. He moves into the 3rd chapter, and he says, here's what's going to happen. God's going to take your kingdom, and he's about to divide it in half by the Medes and the Persians. They're about to take you over. Now listen, there are a whole lot of people that deny the accuracy of this book, who will turn to history and say, let's just study what history says. The Bible just introduced a 1,000-year age of the Persian Empire coming in and conquering the entire world. And it starts tonight. It starts with a finger that showed up on the wall to say, God's been counting it down. You're finished. He put you in a weight to see if you would balance, and you were found with a debt you cannot pay. God will take your kingdom away from you, and he will divide it between the Medes and the Persians. And the king says, get the robe. Get the robe. Daniel, I told you if you could tell me what the writing said, 3rd of the kingdom. So you are. Let it be decreed on this night that Daniel is the 3rd of the kingdom. And I believe instantaneously, while he is rewarding Daniel with the promotion of Babylon, that the drunk guards at the gates are being slaughtered. At this exact moment, they've been partying hard. It's not just in the throne room. It's the thousands in front of the thousands in front of the entire kingdom, because at this moment, the Medes and the Persians are charging the gates of Babylon. The king is sitting in the throne room, and all of a sudden, as they're getting ready to place this robe upon Daniel, they hear, to arms! To arms! We're being attacked! We're being attacked! Who's attacking us? Some army! It's massive! They're everywhere! Your Highness, we've got to get you out of the palace. We've got to get you out of here. We've got to get you to safety. The army is not prepared to defend it. The guards at the gates are already dead. Belshazzar, come, please, saddle a horse and get him out. And here's what the Bible says. Nebuchadnezzar, his king, loses his mind, announces that there is only one God, dies. Belshazzar becomes king. And what do we have of all of history from his kingdom? He threw a massive party, and God said, I'm sick of watching you party this way. I'm about to take you out. And so he writes on the wall, tonight the kingdom goes away from you. Daniel gets rewarded as the 3rd ruler of the land, and then the Medes and Persian Empire comes kicking in his gates. The king gets on the horse, and here's his story. How does he go out in a blaze of glory? In that night, Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, well, he was killed. Period. No great battle, no great defense, no like Spartan 300 to fight around him on his death door. No. God said, I saw you and I've had it. Here comes the judgment, and it comes quickly. Then Darius, the king of the Medes, conquers the nation of Babylon. And as they're going through, what's the first thing any king does? Pause. You got to go back 3 weeks to our story. Jerusalem's king, who thinks his kingdom cannot fall, is put down on his knees. The blindfold is removed off of his head, and there stands each and every one of his sons. And they make him watch. Do you remember, church? If you just conquered a kingdom and you want to make sure there's no rebellion, there's no uprising, nobody else to take the throne, you have to eliminate the competition. Dad got to see son after son after son after son slaughtered, and after they killed the last son, they immediately scooped out his eyes from his head. So the last thing the king could remember seeing ever was that his line had come to an end. They just conquered the mightiest kingdom in the known world. Babylon just fell. The palace where the king was sitting just hours before having a party is covered in bloodshed. And as the new conqueror walks through his newly captured capital, one by one, the rulers of Babylon are slain. Who just became the 3rd ruler in Babylon? What was his name? And Darius meets him. And in this moment says, spare him. Don't kill Daniel. Now, why that has any importance at all, let's just review Daniel's life for our stories for a moment. He's at home in Jerusalem as a young man. Babylon comes in, kicks in their front door, conquers him, and moves him off to Babylon. Now Babylon, the nation that he's had been assimilated into, don't you remember what Nebuchadnezzar's decree was? Teach them the language. Teach them how to read it. Teach them how to work it in our ways. Put them in positions of leadership. Let's make them part of who we are in this kingdom. Well, it's gone. Now comes the Medes and the Persians and King Darius to rule his way. This is Daniel's third king in his lifetime, from a totally different nation and a totally different culture. And God has been showing this man dreams that we will discuss again a long time from now when we get over into a book called Revelation. But Darius is about to play a big role in meeting not just Daniel, but the package that comes along with him starting next week when you show back up. All right, don't miss it. If you want to read a little bit ahead, you can do so. As it talks about it, he was 62 years old, and it pleased Darius. That's the next chapter in the next verse. He thought he made a good decision on this man when he met him. We'll see how good of a decision it turns into be. As we talk about Daniel, one of the most told stories ever told out of the Bible. Daniel, what was he most known for? Being thrown into a... How did he get there and what happened?